Hey, everybody, and welcome to our second transition talk here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. I am Tom Amenta, one of the co-authors of the 20-Year War and a veteran of the 75th Ranger Regiment. And to start, we have to also announce the gentleman who was always supposed to be my co-host here and is back from his time spent helping the Defense Force in the Ukraine. Dan Blakely, my co-author and my brother from another mother. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back.
Today, we are joined by two of the loveliest ladies that I have ever had a privilege to meet in the veteran space, Sophie and also her van Sage, which will be a sort of critical part of the story as we go through this. I don't want to spoil that. You have one of the genuinely most interesting lives of anyone that I have ever met. Period. And I'm lucky to feel like I've met a lot of people, but I'm like this is so interesting. So introduce yourself, like say who you are, and then wherever you want to like take the interesting, just sort of like go with it and just sort of like freestyle the way that you're off to do when dancing.
Sure. Well, hi, my name's Sophie Hilaire. Um, Currently, I live in a Sprinter van named Sage, like Tom mentioned. I'm transitioning into full-time homesteading on 102 acres in Kentucky. So that's kind of where I'm at in life now. But my life started I guess right around Cleveland, Ohio is where I was born. My mother is Korean and my dad was from Pennsylvania. They met in Korea. And I have a couple siblings. They're both younger. They both also went to West Point and served in the Army. So, yeah, from my childhood, I went to West Point for undergrad. From there, I had a 5-year commitment to the Army. I ended up extending it to 6 years. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And from there, went to business school at Wharton, got my MBA there, and then went to McKinsey to do about 5 years of consulting. And then I did a little something that I call retirement, which means I just exited the rat race and just kind of started over with a new set of values for life. And that's where I'm at now.
Oh, that's so incredible and a lot to dive into there. But I kind of want to start at the very beginning, especially since your siblings went to West Point as well. Um, were you like a middle child, a younger child, older child? What inspired you to go to West Point? And what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, well, I'm the oldest of three. People always say, "Oh, did your dad go to West Point?" And no, like we really had almost no military in our family. Not in the immediate family anyway. But yeah, I decided to go first, and from there, my younger siblings, I guess they felt like I had made a good decision, and so they were going to go do the same thing. How I actually ended up at West Point, well, I graduated in 2009. So I got there in 2005, a few years after 9/11, which happened when I was a freshman in high school. So it just felt like something huge was going on for our country and the world. And I felt called to go be a part of that. For me, I think what was unique is that I've always just been comfortable around violence, given all of the chaos and abuse of my childhood. And so, there's a gift in that. It's not difficult to show up for things like the Army and a deployment, which I knew that joining the Army at that time would very likely mean deploying, which to me felt exciting, important, and something that I wanted to be a part of.
I feel like I've got to tell on you a little bit because you talked about the pre-retirement with Sage, which is awesome and I want to get into. But as you were a consultant at the most prestigious consulting firm in the world, you also climbed Everest. Okay, like you have a Guinness Book of World Record for running in a bomb suit, which, and please do not take this the wrong way, it's having been in one of those and having met you and seeing that you're a slight frame, like that's a hell of an accomplishment. Like and West Point's the same thing. It's super hard to do. It's a super complex. Like, what is it that's just that like drive? Like, I mean, Sophie, you're like 1,000 miles an hour all the time.
Well, that's really kind of you to say, but I want to clarify one thing. I did not run a marathon in a bomb suit. I ran the marathon in the definition of full military uniform, which was the Guinness World Record definition of it based on what a British soldier had done, which was like, ACU, I think at the time, tops and bottom, boots, helmet, and body armor with plates in it. So not quite a bomb suit, not even close.
Oh, my apologies. You ran in 40 pounds of stuff instead of 70. My B.
But yeah, I think it's a fair question, and it's something that I honestly didn't really start examining until the last few years, because I think for so many years I was just getting so much, I guess, validation for my over the top kind of just relentlessness, as you would say. I think for me, it really comes from this deep-seated insecurity of, this insecure overachiever archetype that was definitely kind of hammered into me. And it's, that's another thing that is kind of like, it can really be the thing that ruins you if you leave it unchecked and just kind of let it take over your life. Or it's a quality that you can extract the gift from, hopefully learn some things about yourself, push beyond your own perceived limits, and go accomplish things beyond what you think you could, and hopefully inspire some others along the way. But I think for me, honestly, that level of, I guess, like, especially in the physical realm of kind of torturing myself through workouts, I think a lot of vets could probably relate to that. There's something, I'm not saying every vet is like that, but there is something in, we're getting paid to work out. There's like a certain style of working out. There's muscle failure, absolute exhaustion, there's things you learn about yourself through that. And so it's like part of the training and everything and the culture for a reason. But the last few years, I've definitely ratcheted it down a few notches. I mean, Everest was 3 years ago, and I would say that was kind of the end of my like striving all the time like that. These days, I do a lot of dancing, yoga. I just woke up and did some yoga in my friend's garden this morning, trying to just calm down the central nervous system and be a little more balanced. So,
and that's incredible, and it's interesting that you did so much, especially immediately after transitioning out of the military. I wonder what that transition specifically was like for you, and I've noticed something, especially as we've had discussions back and forth, through writing the book and then also, at the exhibition, that maybe some portion of it might have paralleled some of what I was going through as far as immediately after transitioning, kind of putting the military aspect of it on the shelf, still relating a lot of, what drives me from that, but not necessarily leaning on, my military identity. Can you talk a little bit about your transition and what you went through?
Yeah, absolutely. So my transition, I went straight from the military into business school. I mean, I had a few months off, and I thought I was being really good about giving myself some solo time to process things. I booked a solo trip to Mongolia and did a lot of deep reflecting there. Although when I compare that trip to the inner work I've done since then, it's like that was really almost nothing. But it was a start, and I was on the right path at least. Went and did my yoga teacher training in Costa Rica and a couple other things, just lots of travel. I always love to travel, especially internationally, and obviously more recently in my van across the US. But yeah, because I went to business school, if anyone listening knows much about business school, it's nothing like being in the Army. It's a lot of partying. It's a lot of networking. It can be very academic too. But I was a couple years older than the median age. I think most vets in my class were like 10 years older than the median age, because a lot of them were Rangers or aviators and had, median age of business school is like late 20s. So it was kind of a weird environment to go from leaving, being on a general staff and my fellow soldiers like crying at my farewell and just feeling really connected to them. And then now we're all just like drinking a lot and partying. It just felt weird. And for a moment, I just thought, okay, I didn't think I wanted to go back to the Army. Like, I knew that I had done everything I wanted to accomplish there, but I did think, oh, wow, like, I wonder if the rest of my life is just going to feel kind of superficial after that. And, but I did actually, over time, I had there were obviously other vets in the program. Wharton probably has one of the biggest veteran contingencies of any MBA program. And there's a ton of support there. And I actually had a good friend who was an upperclassman at West Point in my company. Her name's Tina. And then she was also stationed in Korea with me. And then she was a year ahead of me at Wharton. And so I was able to have a lot of heart-to-hearts with her about just kind of the transition. And, you know, she was a year ahead of me. And so she was able to help me through that a lot. And, you know, leaning on my fellow vets, even though a lot of them probably, you know, at that point had families and a really different lifestyle at business school, it was just nice to kind of lean on them and go through that together. But ultimately, I realized like I needed that time to party. I needed that time to decompress. You know, I had gone from high school and, you know, living, you know, under my parents' roof straight to West Point, which a lot of people would consider a prison of sorts. And then from there into the Army, which, you know, like by then they've stripped you of your identity and told you who you are. And, you know, it's go, 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 go nonstop. It's not like you have like a whole break at any point in time. And yeah, so at business school, I got to explore a lot of different things, you know, started going to Burning Man, started actually going to therapy every week, and exploring things about myself and doing a lot of inner work. So yeah, I think overall the transition went well, but it wasn't like, oh, hopped out of the Army, life is suddenly, you know, sunshine and rainbows and everything's really easy. It took some work.
You were on this like track that like everyone in the quote unquote business world or anything is like the golden ticket, right? Prestigious undergrad, arguably the most prestigious MBA in the world in Wharton, depending on how you want to metric these things. Then you go to McKinsey, which for those of you who don't know is literally the par excellence consulting firm in the world. And most people start their track record at, which was also, I know that for a while you were still working at McKinsey when you hopped into the van, you know, to do van life, but you toured the United States in Sage, she the mighty Mercedes Sprinter van. You decided that wasn't there. You're now working on homesteading and sustainability farming, and you've been really open. And I really appreciate this, especially as someone who is also dealt with a tremendous amount of trauma in their life. And frankly, for the past 4 months has had to deal with just a breakdown. What, like, explain to me how sort of like that military mindset, you were able to turn it. And maybe this is just me telling on myself because I'm just fascinated in general, but it's like, it feels like you've taken that I can accomplish anything, I will accomplish the mission no matter what, and sort of turned it to this more sort of humanistic centered approach, or just, you know, like making sure that your mental and emotional health is there. I mean, you could stay on this track that would be lauded by sort of the world, and instead you've sort of chosen to march to the beat of your own drum.
Yeah, well, thank you for, I guess, acknowledging that. You're right. It is, you know, a lot of my, especially old McKinsey colleagues are like, what the heck are you doing? You're moving onto a farm and doing what? And but if you look at a typical van lifer, this is actually a pretty normal next step. Build a tiny home. Like, no one goes from van life to the suburbs. It's just, that would be really, I mean, why? But yeah, for me, I think it really helped to, well, I guess for one, I do have this kind of pattern that like every few years, and maybe every 3 to 5 years or so, I get hyper focused on a new thing that I really want to learn about, that I'm really curious about. And if I'm being honest, I just feel like there's not enough years in a lifetime to do all the things that I'm really interested in. I'll never be the best at anything, and not trying to be, but I want to like just get to see a lot of different, experience a lot of different lifetimes in this lifetime. So I think that hunger for just curiosity and learning has pushed me into these different realms. And then whenever I exhaust one of these periods of my life in 3 to 5 years, then I want to do something completely different, like a total 180. So I did feel like I was definitely on the track of the very classic, like, you know, from McKinsey, normally people are on the CEO track. That's how it is. And I thought that's what I wanted. But honestly, deep down, I was kind of dreading that. And I thought, oh, I feel like I have to do this just because I can get into these institutions and a lot of people want to be here. And it was my dream at one point in time. So like, I have to do these next steps, and maybe I'll like it once I get there. But I knew I was lying to myself. And finally, I just got to the point where I thought, like, why would I choose to do something that I'm in charge here. There's no one telling me what to do. Like, these institutions aren't forcing me to go anywhere next. And I hung out at McKinsey for 5 years. I mean, most people are there for like 2 years, maybe 3 years. I was there so long because I just didn't know what I wanted to do next. Like, every next step that was very logical after that felt kind of like a death sentence. So I knew that I needed some time to deprogram from all of, that set of values that like, I just need to keep making more money every year, add another $50,000, whatever it is to my salary, get the mortgage, have the family that looks exactly like how it should. And when I realized I was trying so hard to check all those boxes, I was actually trying really hard to hold on to things that made me absolutely miserable, whether it be relationships or my own life. And every day of the week, it just wasn't fun or fulfilling to me. I ended up in this van, and this lifestyle really helped open my eyes to, wait, there's this whole other world outside of this single track of like the height of success towards the CEO track. And a lot of the stuff out here is actually a lot more authentic to me. And it was actually things I was excited about. And not only that, like I could, if I defined success differently, I could actually be really excited about being successful in these other roads, and not even like a well-worn path or anything, but just making up what I wanted to do. It's a crazy thing, that we can literally just go do what we want to do. But I don't know. No one ever told me that, or if they did, my ears weren't open. So yeah, I feel like at this point in my life, I've just spent a couple years in my van actively deprogramming from really caring about only monetary gain and prestige and impressing people. I do acknowledge that I'm quite overeducated for the current path that I'm on in life. I mean, there's things that definitely translate still. From being a vet, I feel like I'm pretty resourceful and scrappy and can just jump into anything. I mean, I'll never forget even like that first summer at West Point when during Beast, which is like our boot camp, that I was thrown into so many situations, especially physically, that were so just terrifying. But you see this long line of everyone in front of you going and doing it, and they all did it. And then you just step up there and you don't have a choice, but you have to just do this. Otherwise you're not going to graduate. There's this like constant looming threat. So you just do it. And each time you do that, you build more and more confidence in yourself. And you just realize, yeah, like if I can do that, I could really go do anything. So a lot of that is translated. And yeah, so now I'm kind of done with just like getting a bunch of degrees and beefing up the resume. I hope to never pull my resume out or update it ever again in my life. I just want to learn farming and practical life skills and be really connected to earth. And to me, that's the true wisdom is, I probably sound like such a hippie right now, but I'm serious. Like there's so much that I just feel like a completely different person on this new path of life, where I could just even be in complete solitude in nature. And I feel like I have everything I need. And that's just never how I felt before.
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think that's all of this has been a very interesting talk, because it's dispelling a lot of the narratives that are out there about veterans, and especially people who are transitioning out and the types of experiences that they go through. And I don't know about both of you, Tom and Sophie, but for me, it was pretty clear what was going to happen when I was transitioning out. I was told either I'm going to go be a contractor for the government somewhere because there were still active wars going on, or I was going to go to school, or I was going to pick up some construction or heavy machinery job, something like that. And those are really the only paths for me. But I discovered my own path through my own journey. And Sophie, you've got such a unique journey, and it seems like you've kind of gone through several phases of transition. What advice would you give to veterans, people who are transitioning out of service now and trying to find their own journey?
Yeah, I would say that it's never too late to rewrite your story. I think there's a lot of great gifts that we come away with from the military, and I think it's important to not just ditch those and throw the baby out with the bathwater. But there's also another level of, this loss of identity that so many feel because they've been told who they are, and wearing the same outfit as everyone around them, and their whole life is their rank or their title. Because the military has a way of kind of taking over your life in a lot of ways, and your family too. But when you transition out, that's your opportunity to take the best of that and then find out who you are authentically and integrate that. So, and for me, that's been the most rewarding process, is kind of rediscovering who I truly am, which honestly goes more back to who I was in high school than who I've been this whole time since then. Although there's stops along the way that have all been a part of my story that I'm really grateful for. But yeah, I think it's all about the integrating of the service in a positive way, and just finding the most authentic path forward, because you get to do that now. It's really empowering.
So I think I might know a little bit of the answer to this question based on what you just said and sort of what the theme of this is as far as transition. But, you know, you've been gracious enough not only to be a part of the book, but also to be a part of the exhibition at the NVMM, which, again, thank you so very much for being a part of this project or these projects at this point in this journey. What do you hope that, you know, viewers, you know, of the exhibit or people watching this this cast today can sort of take away from your story and some of the other, you know, veteran stories that have been featured?
So I think there's a couple things that come up. One is I think what's so amazing about the exhibition is that it shows a lot of diversity in the paths post-military. You know, Dan, you listed off what you thought your options were, and that's not what I saw in the book or in the exhibit. So you know how a veteran looks, and I'm honored you included me. I think a lot of people don't normally think of like an Asian woman as the classic archetype of a vet, although that's starting to change. But yeah, and the paths that we all take have been really diverse. And I think the theme that I noticed around all of them has really been around healing. And not necessarily some of the healing definitely came from, you know, our time in the military, given the wars we were a part of and just the timing of our service. But also just, you know, healing whatever that was that drew us to that world in the first place. And that's really just universal to the human experience. So, so yeah, I hope that if anything, this book kind of expands viewers' minds of what a veteran is and what you can accomplish post-military, and also inspires folks to get on track to figure out what their path is to healing and self-actualization, because you know it's kind of like the point of being human.
That's incredible, and thank you, you know, very much for sharing your story. And something you said in the previous answer too is that authenticity and finding yourself in that authenticity. Who is the authentic self? I think is definitely the path that many veterans are trying to get to, and ultimately, probably majority of them do accomplish. But it's all a journey, it's all a transition, and it's all an experience that we all go through that is different from what, you know, person I may have served with to my left and to my right. And that is okay. And that's good to explore that. And that's good to communicate that to the broader audience, civilian and veteran.
Thank you so very much for taking the time, along with the lovely Lady Sage. We also appreciate her of the Sprinter van. And then, you know, if, you know, for everyone here who's tuned in, if you're excited, if you're in the Columbus, Ohio area, please stop by the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. I can, you know, especially watching Sophie nod the way that she was, and Dan as well, like it is truly a great veteran experience. And we really encourage everyone to do that. And it's part of the reason we're so excited about the project, to partner with them on that, because it is a great way to sort of show the collective veteran experience. If you can't do that, you can go to nationalvmm.org, and there is the digital content for the 20-year war exhibit, and also a whole bunch of other really interesting and fascinating things, again, about the veteran experience. We will be back again with another transition talk for all of you shortly, but that is in the future. And I appreciate so much, Sophie, that you were talking about mindfulness and things like that. So what is something that you would like the audience to be mindful of as we close this one out?
Oh, I think right now the world kind of still feels like a crazy place. This kind of been going on for a few years now. And I think something to be mindful of, and something I think about a lot, is to just not feed into the divisiveness and to really just focus on what connects us all, whether it's Americans or people across the world. I think we all really need to support one another and be there for one another instead of turning against one another. So that's something that it's constantly on my mind every day, and would love to just share that thought with everyone who's listening.
Well, that's a perfect way to close out, and thank you so much. And I think that's a really important thing for people to continue to reflect on and be mindful of. So thank you once again, and look forward to catching up with you again at some time in the future.
Thanks so much, guys.